With the first pick in the 2024 fantasy draft, Chris Towers selected Christian McCaffrey. We're going to talk about our first mock draft of the 2024 season. Tyreek Hill was after that. I'm not going to spoil everything, but I do think it's pretty clear, guys. Kyren Williams is going to be the lightning rod in fantasy football. He's going to be the controversial one that everyone's going to be arguing about for months. So we'll start doing that today. All right, cool. What's up, Dave? Jamie?
Yo.
Why is he the controversial one?
I think he's easily the most controversial first-round pick if he's in the first round.
Right now, I mean, he might be somewhat controversial, but I think a lot of people are excited about what he was able to accomplish. And if no one of significance is brought in, he's going to certainly be in the conversation to be a first-round pick.
I took him in the first round. I took him 12th, but I think it was tough. It's going to get a lot of conversation going, you know?
It did get a lot of conversation going, and there were some people that thought that was way too low, and some people thought that he went way too high. So I agree with you. I think that for now, he's the most controversial pick of the first round.
I always like when we do our mock drafts because the person on the end who has to make the picks, the double picks, how it could, like if you took him at 13.
Yeah, right, sure. Who went 13? It was Garrett Wilson, right?
In fact, actually, I think I could have easily taken Garrett Wilson 13 or 12 and Kyren 13, but you know.
Well, when I wrote the recap, I was like, "Oh, this is cool. We got 3 potential top 10 quarterbacks going in round 11." But Chris Towers took Brock Purdy and George Kittle back to back, and he took Purdy first at the last pick around 10.
Exactly. All right, so we'll get into that a little bit later, plus some news from around the NFL. And we're giving the fantasy awards. We gave you the nominees on Monday's show. We'll tell you who won today. The big news, the Titans fired Mike Vrabel. Their GM, Rand Carthon, also did not rule out re-signing Derrick Henry, but Carthon came from the 49ers organization, so you're going to see Bobby Slowick, who's with the Texans, but from the 49ers. You're going to see his name. I forgot the offensive coordinator for the Dolphins.
Frank Smith.
Frank Smith, thank you. Such a complicated name. I can never remember. Frank Smith. His name will be connected there, but, Vrabel's out. Honestly, I don't know how much time, whatever. We'll spend how much time you want. But Sean Payton did not rule out Russell Wilson returning. Josh McDaniels could go back to New England. And if you look at Mac Jones in 2021, that was by far his best year. So it is possible that Josh McDaniels could be a real boost to the Patriots offense. Keenan Allen says he wants to stay with the Chargers in 2024. Dave, I just told you about the Titans, the Broncos, the Patriots, and the Chargers. What do you want to talk about there?
Let's start with the Chargers because they've got an interesting salary cap situation. They're one of 5 teams that's like 60 million something over the cap, and they could get right under the cap real quickly if they just cut Mike Williams and cut Keenan Allen. But they restructured Keenan Allen's deal last year. I would imagine they would do something similar there. But Mike Williams is the one that I bet they let go. It's kind of mean because he tore his ACL, but 30 years old and they can save $20 million on the cap if they let him go.
He had Keenan Allen arguably his best season. He was top 5 per game, Jamie, at such an advanced age.
He'll be 32. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, he'll be 32. So that's amazing.
He's one of 3 receivers this season to average over 20 PPR points per game. And so, kudos to him for how he performed. And, we talked about this prior to the season about receivers age 30 and above. And between him and Mike Evans, it was a fantastic season for both those guys. We can certainly debate about the performances and injuries as well with Cooper Kupp and DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams, 3 other prominent receivers that were age 30 and above, and how they performed. But for what Keenan Allen did and probably means to Justin Herbert, and I would imagine would mean to whatever coach is coming in to, lead those guys, they would love to have a player like Keenan Allen, certainly at a reduced cost, but to love to have a player like him around to help, ease the transition of what the next phase of this receiving core looks like. Because they whiffed, at least what it seems like, on Quentin Johnson. And hopefully, he's able to have a better second year and beyond. But right now, it looks like this receiving core is a disaster. If Mike Williams, even back, not ready, but 30 years old, coming off an ACL, 32-year-old Keenan Allen, and a struggling, rookie receiver like Quentin Johnson.
I agree. Rank these three for PPR in 2024. Keenan Allen, Tank Dell, Devontae Adams. Everybody at home, do the same.
Dell, Allen, Adams.
Allen went first of the three in our mock draft, 25th overall.
So it's interesting because I'm finishing up the lists of our top 12 wide receivers that'll be published on Wednesday, and Heath is the only one to have Keenan Allen ranked in his top 12. Adam, you were actually the only one to have both Texans receivers in your top 12. Only 3 people had Tank Dell ranked in their top 12. Nobody has Devontae Adams in their top 12. So of this group, Dell, from our 7 people who did this exercise, Dell is the highest, then Allen, then Adams.
Yeah, I think it's pretty ridiculous that I didn't put Keenan Allen in the top 12. Doesn't he deserve it? Because he's top 12 per game. He's not top 5. This was just a strangely great year, but he's top 12 per game every single year in PPR. And he is going to be 32. That's crazy, but showing no signs of slowing down. And
he's got a big sign of slowing down.
Yeah.
Missed 4 games in the end of the season.
He did. I never like to speculate on this stuff, but they were out of it. Justin Herbert wasn't playing, so I do.
That's true.
You have to wonder about that. Like, actually, who that happened with 2 years ago?
Hopkins.
Yep. Thank you, Hopkins. So yeah, but he was so good, and I feel like young players get hurt all the time too. So am I gonna take Tank Dell over him coming off major surgery? Not for an ACL or anything, but for a broken leg.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little crazy if he ends up back with the Chargers, and then I think you compare him to a guy like geez, I was going to say Wes Welker, not Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, who aged very well and put up great PPR numbers, 100 catch kind of seasons in his early 30s. And I think that's what the profile of Keenan Allen kind of looks like. So maybe a player like Keenan Allen can withstand age, better than a different type of outside physical receiver, because he's just getting.
So it's interesting, and we'll spend a lot of time on this offseason. But when you were talking about your quarterback, putting a quarterback in the top 24 when we talked on Monday, like in this case, you don't have to have Allen ranked as a top 12 guy. But if you feel like he's safer and still has the same type of upside, this is the type of player you can pivot to if you're just like, okay, I feel like I'm stuck.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask you guys a question, then we're going to move on here. You're a head coach. You're the hottest head coach candidate out there. Everyone wants you. The Falcons, the Chargers, the Panthers, the Titans, and the Commanders have offered you the job. Which one are you taking?
Atlanta.
Run down the teams one more time.
Falcons, Chargers, Panthers, Titans, Commanders.
Yeah, I think it's either Atlanta or the Chargers. I would say that the owner would be the tiebreaker, and I would say Atlanta.
See, I'd go to Atlanta because you get to reshape the quarterback position, hopefully in a way that would benefit the playmakers there. It's a division that's clearly wide open that you could walk in and win right away, and have a lot of young talent locked up for several years. Plus, as a defense, I think that can certainly be competitive to win now in the playoffs if they get another piece or two. So that's the easy choice for me. I think if you're looking from what Dave said with the owner, like, as bad as the Panther situation is, those guys are getting paid for a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
You're pretty much set, no matter if you last a year or you last, hopefully, a long tenure.
Sure, but you'll get paid similarly from Atlanta. You just might do more work in Atlanta than you might in Carolina.
You want to talk about reshaping the quarterback situation, though? The Commanders are definitely going to be able to do that. They have the second pick, and they have the most cap space in the NFL. So that is another one that's pretty interesting. I think
that would actually be second for me of the teams that you listed, unless you want to go the Chargers just because you're tied to Justin Herbert. But yeah, you have the chance to maybe get Caleb Williams if you want to make a trade with Chicago, or if Chicago has other plans. Drake May is sitting in your lap if you decide to go a different direction, or the team at 1 goes a different direction. It should be better ownership. I think people forget that there's no more Daniel Snyder, so the culture there and everything about that team is definitely heading in the right direction.
Who's forgetting that?
Huh?
Who would forget that? There isn't a single Commanders fan that's forgotten that.
I don't think Commanders fans, but I think the general public may not realize, like, there's the novice fan may not realize that there's a better situation. There will be better opportunities to win, because I think the allure of that team will be there, as opposed to teams maybe not wanting to go sign there as free agents outside of chasing money. I think it's interesting, that Ben Johnson's name is getting linked there. We probably would have said a few months ago, no, stay away. But because of the ability to draft a quarterback and hopefully spend some money on the right spots, it could turn around quickly and could be a good fantasy situation as well.
Hey, if you're not busy, you're not doing anything busy, Grizz. Go vote for us on sportspodcastawards.com. Thank you, Dave. Sportspodcastawards.com. Click vote now. Find the best fantasy betting and gaming podcast category and vote for fantasy football today. We have a couple of weeks left. Help us out here. Sportspodcastawards.com. Best fantasy betting and gaming podcast. Thank you very much. It's super quick and super easy. There's a link in the episode description, or you can do the QR code on YouTube. The fantasy awards, who won? Let's find out. Our fantasy MVP. We asked you on Facebook. We got a lot of votes, so this is good stuff. Our candidates were McCaffrey, both Rams guys, Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua, and Dak Prescott. And this was the landslide runaway biggest blowout of all of them. And who do you guys think won the fantasy MVP?
Should be Kyren, but I think it might be McCaffrey.
It was McCaffrey, 72% of the votes.
Okay.
72%. And I agreed with it. I like, that's who I voted for. So I was surprised at the margin, but it was the 4 games missed, I think, from Kyren that took it, gave it to McCaffrey easily there. So congratulations, Christian McCaffrey. You are our fantasy MVP. Biggest bust, we had Mahomes, Bijan, Pollard, and Stephon Diggs. And now I, of course, you know how I work. Like, I do a game show. I screw up one of the rules. I try to get a mock draft. I invite too many people. I always mess up one detail. I don't pay attention. I left the option. I forgot this was even an option on Facebook when I did the polls for people to add more poll options themselves. So any of the people in the group could have added options, and they did add one, and that person actually won. But the 4 that we gave were Mahomes, Bijan, Pollard, and Diggs. Of that group, who do you think won with 33% of the vote?
Pollard.
I'll say Bijan.
It was Pollard. Pollard had 33%. So he's sort of the unofficial winner. Now, there was a write-in candidate that got 36% of the vote. And I don't remember if I put non-injury related, but I think you could make the case either way. Eckler got 36% of the vote. And he was so bad when he was healthy. So I don't know. Who should we give it to, Pollard or Eckler?
So what I did for the story for the all bus team, I said had to play, can only miss a minimum of 4 games, and he missed 3.
Yeah, I think that's all he missed was 3. I think he wins then. I think we got to give it to Eckler. We got to respect the people's vote.
Yeah, I think you've got to give it to the people. He had a good week 1. He got hurt in week 1. He really didn't put it together except for a 3-week stretch in the middle of the year. And then after that, mostly Dudsville. And if the people want it, I'm glad that you left that open. You should do that next year.
I guess
let people add other options next year. Why should it be up to us on who's nominated? Let them nominate too. Eckler's a good choice.
All right. Best waiver wire ad. We had Puka, Kyren, Love, and Purdy. And this was a runaway too. 55% of the vote too.
Kyren.
Oh, yeah.
Kyren.
Was it Kyren or Puka?
It was Kyren. 29% to Puka.
That's what I thought.
And I will say 5 people said Sam Laporta. We didn't put him on there because he was drafted in a lot of leagues, but shout out to Sam Laporta. And comeback player of the year, we had Breece Hall, Raheem Mostert, Dak Prescott, and Joe Flacco. Breece Hall, Raheem Mostert, Dak Prescott, and Joe Flacco. One of these guys got 51% of the vote. Who's our comeback player of the year?
You were saying it's got to be Breece Hall. I think, though, if people didn't interpret correctly, they may have said Flacco just because he may be the actual NFL comeback player of the year.
I would have voted Mostert.
Mostert was second at 32%. I don't know what he's coming back from. I don't even get that, but sure. Flacco is the winner. And yeah, Breece Hall only got 7% of the vote, tied with Dak. Flacco, 51%. He's our comeback player of the year. I think it's ridiculous, He played what, 5 games? 6
5 games.
Breece Hall was like the number 2 running back in fantasy or something like that. Whatever. You all are wrong, but you are entitled to be wrong. Thank you very much for voting. Much appreciated. Thank
So
you.
if we take only the polls, right? So take out the Eckler write-in winner.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything we suggested did not come through except for Kyron as the comeback as the waiver wire guy, because I think we said Monday that it should have been Williams as the MVP.
I was on McCaffrey. I did say I was on McCaffrey.
You said McCaffrey. The biggest bust was
we had that. We had Pollard.
I know, but we didn't get the one that everybody wanted.
We did. Right. We did.
You were saying Breece Hall should be the comeback player of the year, and we were saying that Kyron would be most likely waiver wire. So
yeah,
3 of 4. Nobody agreed with that.
Oops. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back and talk about our mock draft. I'll give you a few more news items from around the NFL, and we'll get into our mock draft right after this. Welcome back. Okay, few news items real quick. The Chargers interviewed Kellen Moore for their head coach position. Mason Rudolph's going to start for the Steelers. TJ Watt is out. The Steelers could get 2 safeties back when they lose at Buffalo this weekend. Everyone on the Dolphins defense is injured, basically. But Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert were limited. Christian McCaffrey is expected to play next week, and the Cowboys, it seems like cornerback Stephon Gilmore is likely to play. We'll talk more about the games tomorrow. Mock draft review. All right, I have 5 questions for you here. And by the way, if you want to follow along with the mock draft.
Oh, we got an offensive coordinator firing.
Oh, yeah, who?
Luke Getsy has been relieved of his duties.
All right, any reaction there?
There's a lot of sentiment that if the Bears are going to move on from Justin Fields, they should move on from Matt Eberflus as well and just hit the reset button across the board. If they're keeping Eberflus, it's probably a sign that they're going to stick with Justin Fields. So you can sort of, it's not necessarily tied together, but this is a potential sign that Eberflus might be able to keep his job.
Right. When's the last time you saw an offensive coordinator fired and then the head coach gets fired right after?
Right.
Okay. Seems rare. And so if this is the move that the Bears are making, this is their reaction to the season, then that means Eberflus is staying, and that I would imagine would greatly improve Justin Fields' chances of staying.
Okay. So the results of this draft are available on the website. I will put a link in the episode description. If you're listening, I've already done that. So you can click on that. You can follow along with the draft. 12 teams, full PPR, 3 wide receivers, and a flex. No kickers, no DSTs. All right. So what was the best pick of this draft, Dave Richard?
I have 2, but one of them was my pick, so I don't want to give out my pick. I will say that the best pick went to Heath, who took Josh Allen in round 4. Just a total callback to when we were devaluing the quarterback position 2 years ago, refusing to take them too soon, and then just getting amazing value. And Josh, it was like late round 4 too, when Josh Allen went. So I think that was the best pick of the draft.
Okay.
And an unlikely one that anybody will see in any of their leagues next year.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how people react to what was a very even distribution of fantasy points among quarterbacks last season. Jamie, what was the best pick in your mind?
And I was jealous of it when Dan took Tyjae Spears. I was so torn on Ramondre Stevenson and Spears. I'm like, if anybody's looking at total points, I don't know how people were sorting this because we were doing it without really a draft room per se, a legitimate rank list to follow of the full list of players. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can get Spears 1 round later. Let me just see if I can sneak him through. And I like Ramondre because I think he'll be undervalued this year as well, coming off the injury, depending on who the coach and quarterback is there for New England. But still has an opportunity to be a very good fantasy asset. And then sure enough, Dan and he was boasting and bragging about I'm going to take this player all the time. He's going to be a round 3 pick next season. I don't know if he'll get that high if he's even the starter there for Tennessee. But yeah, he got him in round 6. I took Stevenson in round 5. I'm sorry, no, it was round 6 going back the other way. I took Stevenson in round 6. I was hoping to get him in round 7. So it was a great pick by Dan, and I was buyer's remorse with Ramondre Stevenson.
Are you saying now that if you could do it again, you'd take Tyjae Spears over Ramondre Stevenson?
No, I'm not there yet, but I do think if he is the guy for Tennessee, depending on some of the changes that they make, he was fantastic in limited opportunities this season on a terrible team, and I think that they will improve their offensive line. Can't get any worse. We'll see if Will Levis is their guy. It looks like that's the case, but a lot that I think you'll be excited about with Spears if he's the number 1 running back for Tennessee.
Okay. My best pick, I think maybe Dave was going to say this one, Mark Andrews, 59th overall.
Right.
Loved it. Late round 5 pick for Mark.
There's no way he's going to go that late. He might play in the playoffs. Like, they're going to start getting him back on the practice field soon. And they don't play this week, so it's going to be like 7 weeks since he broke his leg. So he might play in the playoffs and then have as close to as normal of an offseason as you can imagine. And then he'll be back next year. No way he's going in round 5. That was a fluke.
He went after Kyle Pitts. That's wild. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, if you're projecting and get a new coach for Atlanta that knows how to use Kyle Pitts the right way, he might have the most upside of any tight end.
Yeah, I think that Andrews does have some concerns. He played 9 healthy games, and in 6 of them, he had 4 to 6 targets. This is still a team that really didn't throw much at all. And they added Zay Flowers and Beckham, and I did think he saw a little bit of a target crunch. We'll see if they bring back Beckham, but Flowers is going to have a role, obviously. And then, does Isaiah Likely just go away? He was so good.
He was.
That, you have to wonder, does he have an increased role? Does that take targets away from Mark Andrews? So he could have a target crunch next year that we haven't really seen before. Okay. Anyway, moving on. But still the best pick. Good job, Dave. And I called Dave yesterday because he made 2 picks right before me that got me so mad. And the second time in my car, yes, I was in my car, I cursed at Dave.
Yeah.
I said, screw you, Dave. Only more worse than that. Anyway, worst pick. Dave, you can start here. What was the worst pick?
This is another one where I had 2. I'm going to take the guy who actually went higher. It was Kenneth Walker in round 2. I thought that was a little too soon for a running back who had, I think it was like 6 games. I've got it right here. He had 6 games with 15 plus PPR points, 6 games with 10.7 or fewer PPR points, and another 3 games he missed or barely played in. I know that he's got great, potential because of the breakaway runs, but there were games we for sure saw him lose passing downs work and third down work to Zach Charbonnet. And toward the end of the year, we saw him losing goal line work to Charbonnet. And I just can't help but think that there's not going to be anything that changes this offseason that's going to make us say, oh, okay, we can be back all in on Kenneth Walker as a 2nd round pick. So I still love the talent. I just wouldn't take him in round 2.
All right, Jamie, what was the worst pick for you?
By
the way, I'm sorry. This was not on. I said it like it was on Jamie's team. I was asking these guys overall worst pick. So yeah, Jamie, overall worst pick in this draft.
I didn't like Mike Evans in round 2 where he went. That's
a good one.
It was Tony 20th. Little too soon for me. You can debate how good he'll still be. We'll see who the quarterback is there, but it feels like you got away with what Mike Evans was able to accomplish this season, and to be chasing that another year that early, I just didn't like it.
Well, he's a free agent, so I think he's going to stay in Tampa, so I would imagine being with Baker is the most likely outcome, but still a chance that he could move on to a different team. Does Kansas City figure out a way to get their hands on him? Would you take him in round 2 if he's the number 1 target for Patrick Mahomes?
I don't know if he would be the number 1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes.
It's true.
Okay, my worst pick was also Ken Walker, but I also had Josh Downs. He went with the 2nd pick of round 7. I just don't know that he really justified that, and he had a nice connection for a little while with Gardner Minshew. Remember, they're going to have a different quarterback next year who's not going to throw the ball as much.
Well, what if Pittman's gone and there's another rookie?
Yeah, I mean, look, then fine. But you got to keep Pittman. So this is a tough draft to do. You have to sort of take your own stances on players and where they're going to be next year, and like Raheem Mostert, we draft Devon Achane 14th overall. Who's to say Raheem Mostert's not going to be better than him next year? But we don't expect that. We don't even know if Mostert's going to be there. You have to make these decisions at this point. So I'm just assuming Pittman's going to be back with the Colts. Young receiver, well, he should be back. But
there were a few times just in the draft room where I know people were like, "Oh, that's a great pick," to other people who made those selections. And so, if you look at Dan's team, I think that was kind of his approach in certain spots. Like he took Kelsey in round 3. That doesn't necessarily speak to I'm taking younger players with upside, but the value of Travis Kelsey in round 3 in Dan's mind, I'm sure, was hard to overlook. But I know he was excited about Spears, clearly based on what he said. And if you just look at some of the players that he drafted Josh Downs, who could be the number 1 receiver there for the Colts. I don't think anybody thinks that's a great situation for what would a number 1 receiver be. But in that spot, if he is that guy, that's about the range he'll start to be considered in PPR, where you start 3 wide receivers. He took Quentin Johnston, who could be the number 1 receiver for the Chargers, or certainly somebody that could take a step forward. He took Michael Wilson, who could be the number 1 receiver for the Cardinals. There's lots of different scenarios that could unfold where these guys aren't necessarily the type of ideal number 1 guys. But I know like that's how Dan thinks, because he also was like, "Oh my God, you had such a great pick with Chase Brown. When I took him, who could be the number 1 running back for the Bengals. So just putting myself in Dan's shoes, that's I think the approach that he took. He's looking for potential guys that could step forward in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I think you're probably doing. I like Josh Downs. No disrespect. I think you're doing Anthony Richardson a disservice if he's your number 1 wide receiver. I just don't think he's a number 1 guy. And the point I was going to make, he went 2 spots ahead of JSN. And if I'm going to gamble on a number 2 receiver there, if I'm going to gamble on a year 2 receiver there, I'm definitely taking Jackson Smith-Njigba ahead of Josh Downs.
Yep.
All right. Next category is biggest risk in the first round. And the first round was McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Lamb, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, back-to-back Lions, A.J. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, and Kyren Williams. What's the biggest risk, Dave, in round 1?
I think you could make the case for any of them being a risk. The 2 that I think you can make the easiest case for, one is McCaffrey, just because he's the only old man in this group, and 28 years old playing running back. Like eventually there's going to be a year where what's going to happen. And then the other one was AJ Brown. And I know that taking wide receivers in round 1, it's definitely a great strategy. It's one that I'm trying to work hard on converting to, and like promising myself that I'm going to take a wide receiver in round 1. But as good as he was, and as much fantasy production as he gave you before the end of the year, I still think the Eagles want to be a run-centric offense. One that certainly what's going to happen when they get inside the 5, when they get at the 1. And I worry a little bit about A.J. Brown getting back to 17 PPR points per game, 18 PPR points per game, being worth that first round pick. And the drop off from that range of where Brown might fall short of to other wide receivers, I mean, that litters round 2 to get a bunch of receivers that can get you 16, 17, 15 and a half PPR points per game. It's more than just round 2. So to me, it's Brown with McCaffrey as an honorable mention.
Yeah, I love AJ Brown there. I think he's still going to be an absolute alpha dominant wide receiver. He's shown that in 2 seasons for Philadelphia, and I don't think that changes as long as he's healthy and as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy. So to me, that pick was absolutely 100% the right spot, if not, a couple picks higher. It's Kyren Williams. I mean, look, we'll jump to the biggest talking point here. If he gets any sort of competition, can he still be that guy? Do the Rams still decide to feature him the same way? I think you should be hopeful. I have him on a couple of dynasty leagues. I'm very excited about Kyren Williams going into 2024, but can he do that again for a guy that was barely used in his rookie campaign? And did he just prove to be the best guy on the roster and ran away with the opportunity? Can he do that again? Or is this going to be another Dameon Pierce, James Robinson type of guy that, not a lot of, not the best draft profile coming into the league, took advantage of a situation and then eventually gets replaced?
Yep. 4.65 40-yard dash. And I know some people don't care about that, but that's just not a great indicator. And it doesn't lead to a lot of success. It's 40 time that slow, 5th round pick, Kyren Williams. And one thing I noticed about Kyren, I shared this with Dave earlier today, his schedule was really easy. If you look at yards per carry allowed to running backs, he did not face a single team that finished top 10 in that category. And in 12 games, he had 8 opponents that were bottom 10 in yards per carry allowed to running backs. Compare that to Rachaad White. Rachaad White faced one team all season that was bottom 10 in yards per carry allowed to running backs. Kyren Williams faced 8 of them in 12 games. Rachaad White faced 7 teams that finished top 8 in yards per carry allowed to running backs. Kyren Williams faced none. So it's a very imperfect stat because at different points in the year, teams are better or worse against the run. Like his week 1, he faced the Seahawks. Seahawks were really good against the run, and he had a good game. But at the end of the year, the Seahawks were terrible against the run, and they finished bad. But at that point, they were like one of the best run defenses in football for some reason. So it's not a perfect stat, but he had a very favorable schedule.
Well, he's also in a perfect situation. I mean, no real backup to take him off the field. Great play caller. Offensive line that got rebuilt on the fly essentially and was very good. So those things should still be there for him again, unless they decide to bring somebody else in. But the Rams, we know what their draft capital is, how they operate. I think they kind of learned their lesson in terms of spending money on that position. I don't think they'll do that. So they seem to have their guy. It's just a matter of how much will he still be their guy. Remember, before he had the ankle injury, I think it was ankle injury, they were talking about using Ronnie Rivers more.
Yeah. All right. One more question, and then we'll get to the results of the draft. Position you were okay waiting on, Dave?
Quarterback.
Jamie?
Pretty obvious. There's more than enough to go around.
I mean, I got Evan Ingram in round 10 and Jordan Love in round 11.
Right.
So you tell me I get players of that caliber that late, I'll do that 10 out of 10 times.
Right. I got Jake Ferguson. I don't even know what round, one of my last picks. So I was going to honestly, I think the answer to this question is every position except wide receiver. When you look at some of the running backs that went right now, I mean, Tony Pollard, 60th, James Conner, 61, Swift, Mostert. These are all in round 6. Ramondre Stevenson, Javonte Williams, Spears, Montgomery at the end of round 6, Eckler, Najee, Brian Robinson, Derrick Henry. Seems like
well, I mean, look at
value there.
While you're there, I guess we could look at Zach's draft from the 10 spot, and he went receiver, tight end with his first 4 picks, and that was AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, and Trey McBride, who you can make a case that's 3 top 12 wide receivers. That's how several people have them ranked. I think Dave has all 3 of those guys in his top 12, if I'm not mistaken. And McBride is going to be in the conversation to be the number 1 tight end, certainly a top 3 option going into next year. So he hit home runs on all of those picks. Then it's a matter of, do you like his running backs? And so he went 4 running backs in a row after that with Joe Mixon, Raheem Mostert, Derrick Henry, and Jalen Warren. And I think a lot of people would puke when you hear those names as the group going into 2024, based on what we think is going to happen to them now. Mostert's 31, Mixon may not have a team, Henry may not have a team, and Warren may still be behind Najee Harris. So he could have done some different things in those rounds. He could have, I think, if I'm not mistaken, taken Ramondre Stevenson over Mostert, which is something I would have definitely done. Could have taken Najee Harris over Mostert, who at least finished the season strong. Am I reading it right that he could have taken Montgomery too? No.
Yeah. Like after he took Mostert, Stevenson, Javonte, Tajay Spears, David Montgomery, they all went. He could have taken Pollard.
So if he has, let's say, Montgomery and Stevenson, that looks like a hell of a team right now. If he has those 4 options. And then he waited, and the quarterback that he decided on was Tua. So, however you want to view Tua going into next year, like that's a fantastic build from the strategy standpoint. How he executed it may not have been great with the running backs that he took, and maybe not taking 4. He could have taken 3 and then another receiver mixed in there to have a maybe better flex option. But that's a great build if you just want to attack it. It's not necessarily 0 RB, but it's a close enough way to start it that you're hitting home runs on your 3 receivers. You hit a home run on your tight end. At least you hope so. You still get a good enough quarterback that's got top 10 upside, and then you just hope that you get a couple running backs in there that can make your team work.
This is exactly 0 RB. You're going 4 picks without a running back, and then and then you're hammering semantics. And then you're getting some running backs who are veterans, and that's what you're counting on. He's hoping that of the guys that he got, 2 of them can start for him at the beginning of the year, and then he's got work to do. He's got to find a running back off the waiver wire at some point in the year, maybe several times, to go and fill in that spot. In theory, the whole idea behind zero RB is you're getting wide receivers who you're going to hit on, who aren't going to miss time with injury, and who are going to basically carry your team while hoping to just strike on one running back that can match those wide receivers. And then another one, whether it's one for 3 weeks, one for 4 weeks, whatever, that just help you along the way. So it's a great strategy. I think he did a phenomenal job with those first 4 picks.
Okay. We're going to take a break and we're going to look at the results of this mock draft when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. We are back. A lot of times there's a commercial on YouTube, and I have no idea when that's going to happen. He tells me, Schaefer tells me in an email, I never look. I should start looking at that. But I was waiting. I was like, they're going to play the ad now? It never came. Okay, the results of our mock draft. Let's start with round 1. And not a lot to talk about here. We already talked about A.J. Brown and Kyron Williams. We have 2 Detroit Lions in round 1. And if I had taken Garrett Wilson 12th instead of 13th, we would have had 2 New York Jets. McCaffrey, Tyreek, Lamb, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, Breece Hall, Bijan, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, A.J. Brown, 2 people with Brown in their last name too. How about that? Jonathan Taylor and Kyron Williams. On to round 2. Garrett Wilson, Devon Achane, Chris Olave, Puka Nacua, Ken Walker, who we already decided that was too early for him, Nico Collins, who did go before Tank Dell, about a round, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, so that's probably a little bit too early for him, Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley, Stephon Diggs, and Michael Pittman. All right, so again, round 2 is Garrett Wilson, Devon Achane, Chris Olave, Puka Nacua, Ken Walker, Nico Collins, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley, Stephon Diggs, and Michael Pittman. It is nothing but running backs and wide receivers. Jamie, your reaction to round 2?
I mean, kind of what you expect. The receiver value is going to be fantastic in this spot, give or take a few of the players that were drafted there. But, you're looking at, the running backs that were in this round, save for, Ken Walker. Like I would prefer Pacheco over him. I would take James Cook over him. I would take Rachaad White over him. So, you put those guys, and I would take all those guys over Barkley as well. You put those guys, potentially in round 2, you could see that happen. But get used to the fact of, this is probably the earliest you'll see quarterbacks go. I hope people learn their lesson and don't reach for, Mahomes or Josh Allen. I'm not going to say who it was, but we had somebody who, I did at least, talked out of taking Mahomes in the first round. Maybe someone who's not necessarily used to drafting very much, but that if you really want Mahomes or you want a quarterback, you could probably get them in round 2 or later. In this case, round 3 or later. So Dave's right. We won't see Josh Allen in round 4, but I do think in most of the experienced leagues, we will start to see quarterbacks fall into the 3rd round. Typically you see those guys go in late 2nd, early 3rd. I think now we'll start to see them mid 3rd into, the 4th round in some cases, but going to be very heavy on running back and wide receiver in the beginning part of the draft in the first 2 rounds.
Okay, let's go to round 3. Keenan Allen, get a little older here. Keenan Allen and Travis Kelce. Actually, you know what? Let me give you some real quick rapid fire round 2 questions. Rapid fire. Michael Pittman, top 24. Yes or no?
Today, yes. We'll see after free agency.
Late round 2 is fine in full PPR.
Who do you like better, Etienne or Barkley?
Etienne.
Same.
Do you think Olave deserves to be a top 15 pick?
Absolutely.
Close to it.
Okay, he hasn't really justified it yet. And you could obviously say the same exact thing for Garrett Wilson, who went 13th, but obviously you know why I'm taking Garrett Wilson there at Aaron Rodgers. But
if you Azer stat it and take the 11 games where Olave had 8 or more targets, he averaged 17.1 PPR points.
Well, I would never do that. That's not how you Azer stat.
Azer stat it with Derek Carr's shoulder injury in the game that he missed.
That I would do. Yeah. But he just like, I don't know. He doesn't score enough damn touchdowns. And I just blame Taysom Hill for it. But all right. I like Olave.
Would you like him better if, how old is he going to be? 32-year-old Taysom Hill isn't on the roster?
I don't think Taysom's on the team.
34-year-old Taysom Hill.
I don't think he's on the team next year.
I love Taysom.
And they phased him out at the end of the season.
Taysom Hill's my favorite player, just so y'all know.
Good. Hope he ends up on the Giants.
I hope he will make any team better. He's terrible for fantasy. He will make any team better. Okay, let's go to round 3. Keenan Allen, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta. Stop right there. Did we get that right? Kelce 1, Laporta 2?
No.
Who's 1? Laporta 1 for you?
Yeah, assuming that he's healthy and he has a semblance of an offseason, he takes part of training camp, he would be my number 1 tight end.
I would take McBride over Kelce too.
All right, full PPR, I get it.
Yeah, Tank Dell, James Cook, Rashad White. Jamie took him there. I thought that was a great pick.
Oh, I was thrilled with that.
Rashad White, middle of round 3. Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Isaiah Pacheco, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel back-to-back, and T. Higgins. I
was surprised with the Higgins pick.
Me too. I think that was my pick. I think that's when you typed, I would love to get a live camera of Adam tilting.
The clock was running down, and we obviously had a big discussion on T. Higgins, and I can't imagine you loving him there if he's the second guy in Cincinnati.
No, I do like him there if he's the second guy in Cincinnati. If they just run it back, I think about where T. Higgins has been the last couple of years, where we were taking him right around 18th last year, middle of round 3, as a very, very safe pick that didn't have, elite upside, but had a very high floor. And I still think he can be that if he's the number 2 in Cincinnati, which I think is the most likely thing there. I'd actually prefer him be the number 2 in Cincinnati than be the number 1 on a bad offense. I don't want
Carolina, right?
Right, exactly. I don't want him.
I 100%.
Yeah, he could be the number 1 in Kansas City.
Well, he could. So there's upside there.
He'd be number 1 in the chart for the Chargers.
I did this draft as if T. Higgins was going to be the number 2, was going to be the same. The Bengals are going to run it back with Burrow, Chase, Higgins, not Mixon necessarily. And I think Higgins is a good pick at 36 because he wasn't going there last year. He had a strange year. Burrow had a strange year. I don't really know what to make of it. I think it's worth the gamble there at 36, but it took me a long time to make the pick. So, I was sweating that. You didn't like it? You didn't like it there?
No, I don't think it's a bad pick. I would have taken Rice over him for sure. I think there's more upside right now. And you can argue Devontae Smith is in a better spot if you're just talking about number 2 receivers. And I get you're probably negative on Smith. Then you just sort of, start to look at how the board unfolded. Like, Metcalf, we crapped on him again, and he had another solid season and should be fine. If you're starting to project out Zay Flowers and what he might become, after what we saw this season. And the wild card to me, and I thought it was a great pick by Thomas, was Drake London, because again, new coach, new offense, new quarterback, hopefully, and you're just unleashing these guys. And we've seen some solid performances at times for London. Imagine what he could be if he's getting 150 plus targets from a competent quarterback. He could be an absolute stud, and we could be talking about him as a second round pick. So those guys, again, if you're projecting out, I know you're looking for a safe floor with a potential high ceiling. The ceiling play might be those other guys. And if you're, floors could be Devontae Smith type of guy, DK Metcalf type of guy, similar to T. Higgins. Ceiling, though, to me, probably favors Rice for sure, and a guy like maybe Flowers and even Drake London.
There's an easy scenario where Rice doesn't have that ceiling, and that is they bring in a legit number 1 receiver.
Sure.
So that hurts Rice. The next pick I made was Jalen Waddle, by the way. I took him with the first pick of round 4. I definitely think Jalen Waddle has a ceiling. A high ceiling. He's an explosive player. So, obviously Jimmy got into round 4. The question I would have for round 3, Dave, just real quick, is Kupp and Adams. What, too risky or just right? I mean, we got Keenan Allen there too. We have 3 receivers in their 30s now: Allen, Kupp, and Adams in round 3.
I think there's a lot that can change with all 3 of them. I think the situation that's least likely to change is going to be Kupp staying in LA. And is he going to be the 1A or the 1B with Puka? That's going to be interesting to figure out. But Devontae Adams, I don't think is a lock to stay in Las Vegas. And I don't think Keenan Allen is a 100% lock to stay with the Chargers. I might put Allen as a higher percentage to stay with his team and for his situation to be the same than Devontae's. But I'm going to put I'm going to put Allen at the top of that list for now. Devontae second and Kupp third. I think this is the round for all three, but Kupp is going to be toward the back. I think he should potentially go like anywhere from 35 to 40.
Okay. All right. Let's go to round 4. Jalen Waddle, Rashee Rice. Zach Brook took Trey McBride, third tight end off the board. Devontae Smith. It's funny now. If you remember that group of receivers at the end of round 2 and into round 3 last year, it was Waddle, Devontae, Higgins. I feel like Olave was in there too.
I think Olave ended up being ahead of them by the time.
No, he was behind.
And then like Calvin Ridley for us. But anyway, Waddle.
He was ahead for me, but
Waddle, Smith, and Higgins
all we were taking him. I felt like we were taking Olave at like 20th overall.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure his ADP was behind those guys though.
Yeah, overall, I agree. But like within the last like 2 weeks of draft season, you don't think Olave made a jump?
No, I think you're both right. I think Olave, we started maybe taking him earlier, but his ADP was just behind those other guys. But they all moved down, right? Well, not Olave, but Waddle, Devontae, and Higgins, they all moved down. Let's see. Oh, and I know what it was. Those were the 3 guys who were the number 2 options on their teams. Kind of interesting.
Yep.
Alvin Kamara goes in the middle of round 4. Drake London, DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, Josh Allen, Amari Cooper, Jalen Hurts, and Jordan Addison. So we already know the quarterback's coming off the board here. We like that late in round 4. What about the year 2 receivers who go here, Jamie? Zay Flowers, 8th in round 4, and then the last pick of round 4, Jordan Addison.
I love the Zay Flowers pick. Again, you know, what you saw from him, certainly after Mark Andrews' injury, and I think that shows the Ravens and shows Lamar that he can produce like an alpha number 1 receiver, which is how he was drafted. So, you know, going back to the Mark Andrews conversation, you brought this up, Adam, you know, can Andrews still be that guy for Baltimore? I certainly think he's got the chance to be a top tier tight end, but I don't know if he's going to necessarily dominate the passing game work and the production in the passing game like he has in years past because of what Flowers should be able to bring to this offense. So I love that selection in round 4. Addison to me is a little bit of a reach because you still have Jefferson there. It's the same concerns as he was as a rookie. You know, the only thing that may help him a little bit, and granted, he was great. I don't think this is and we're nitpicking, you know, so like round 5, round 6, maybe at the latest for Addison, you know, is where he should go. But in terms of, you know, where's his high end potential, he's never going to be the one. You don't know the quarterback situation right now. And then if Hawkinson is 100% come week 1, you still have that factor also. So it just felt a little bit too soon for Addison, especially some of the guys that went behind him in round 5. That's the thing I think you look at. There's some guys that went after him. Like I like Jaden Reed better than Jordan Addison personally. I was thrilled to get him in round 5.
Agreed. He averaged 12.4 PPR points per game in the first 5 weeks of the season. That's when Cousins was healthy. Jefferson was playing. I think Jefferson got hurt in that week 5 game, if I recall. And his best numbers came after that with Cousins and no Justin Jefferson. You'll remember the game against the 49ers for Addison. For Flowers, he just ended last season so strong. And you can't help but think that he's going to be able to pick up from there and maybe be like one of the best breakout wide receivers in fantasy in 2024. So completely agree. Totally on board with Zay Flowers as the top 50 type of pick.
I'm going to have to update my research. So few examples of wide receivers on offenses that are bottom 5 in pass attempts, finishing top 12 in PPR. And I don't know if where were the 49ers in pass attempts, I wonder. But it just doesn't happen very often. So
you ask, I tell.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds.
I got it. Oh, they were last in pass attempts? Wow. Did you realize that? The 49ers threw the fewest passes in the NFL. I guess that makes sense because they were so efficient. They were the most efficient team ever, basically.
But now you have their coaching staff or their tree littered around the NFL.
Through week 17, the 2 teams that were lowest in pass attempts per game were the 49ers and the Ravens.
Yeah, how about that?
29.1.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, actually, let's see where, just curious, where did Debo and Ayuk finish in fantasy points? Oh, neither of them finished in the top 12 in PPR.
In points per game, they did.
Yeah, in points per game, did they?
They were both over 15, just barely.
No, they are not top 12. Well, no, they're not.
They are for 18 games, for 17 games.
No, I don't. If they are, it's just barely, but I don't think
Yeah,
so.
it's just barely. They're just inside.
Lamb, Hill, Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jefferson, Puka, A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, DJ Moore. That's 9. I'll skip Mike Williams. Mike Evans, 10. Tank Dell, 11. Jamar Chase, 12. That's what I have. I have Debo, 13. And
They
14.
finished both with more points per game than Tank Dell, who's at 15 exactly.
And that includes week 18.
All right. Okay. Anyway, moving on to the next round. We'll do the next round, then we'll take a look at our teams here. But round 6 or round 5?
I think we haven't done round 5 yet. So
yeah, round 5 starts with a pretty interesting pick. George Pickens, 49th overall. Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Terry McLaurin, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Mixon, Mark Andrews, and Tony Pollard. So round 5, picks 49 through 60 are Pickens, Jacobs, Chubb, McLaurin, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Mixon, Mark Andrews, Tony Pollard.
How many of those names did you make the face that you make when you're in front of a dirty diaper? If a lot of them did, then I think that's the fertile ground to go and target a quarterback, especially if you're getting somebody like Lamar or Mahomes in that range.
The answer to your question for me is only Pitts for sure. And maybe, I didn't like Pickens there. And I didn't really like Jaden Reed as much. I know, Jamie, you liked it, but go ahead. You loved your Jaden Reed pick there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he finished more points per game than Rice. He was second in terms of rookie wide receivers in points per game. And I think just scratching the surface, especially if they're going to use him, like, I've been saying, like baby Deebo Samuel, giving him opportunities to get carries and throwing the ball to him as well. And you saw in the games when he was featured in the passing game with, 8+ targets, go back to the Minnesota game in week 17, he was a superstar. So there's a lot to love about getting pieces around Jordan Love, and not that I planned it this way, but to have that Packer stack was kind of enticing to get Jaden Reed and Jordan Love, to have that as a sort of happen organically for a redraft league. But looking at the receivers around him, I think you can make a case McLaurin is still better. I'm not going to necessarily fight you on that, especially if the right quarterback is brought in there. I like Reed better, but you can make a case for McLaurin. I would take him over Calvin Ridley, knowing the situation for Ridley may not be in Jacksonville, and who knows where he ends up playing. Going ahead to the receivers after that, I like him better than the guys in round 6. I won't get there to spoil it for you. And I would take him over George Pickens also. I think there's just a better, at least right now, quarterback situation for the Packers and for Jaden Reed. So I love the setup for him. This was another one I was actually debating in round 4. I was like, you know what? Let me take Metcalf. It was between Metcalf, Flowers, and Reed. And I couldn't justify taking Reed over those guys. But I do like the fact that he was still on the board and was sitting there. I just go back to one other pick in this round. Josh Jacobs in round 5 is an absolute steal. We have no idea where he's going to play. I think people don't realize that he's younger than Barkley. He's only 25. Still has
20. His age 26 season is coming up.
Yeah, still. I mean, it's
great. No, I agree with you.
He's right in his prime. We'll see if the Raiders, work out a deal with him or franchise tag him and how that all plays out again. But wherever he and Barkley go, it's going to be kind of fascinating because they still have enough to offer that they can be superstars still. Jacobs had a down season by comparison, certainly to where he was 2 years ago. And coaching change, quarterback, all those things matter for him. But even if he comes back to the Raiders, you're talking about a guy that should, worst case scenario, should be probably a round 3 pick. Maybe he creeps in around 4, depending on how receivers go earlier, but still has top 10 upside. And so, just writing the running back story, you can see it on the site of how all 7 of us ranked him. He's not a top 12 guy for me. I think he was for about 3 or 4 of the 7 of us. No more than 10th. Nobody had him higher than 10th. But still a guy that offers plenty of upside. Like he's I think he'll be 13th for me when I start to, break it down. But want to see where he ends up. But round 5 is just way too late for him.
Agreed 100%. He's 12th for me. And I'm gonna draft him on the assumption that he's gonna get me 14 PPR points per game because As a rookie, 14.1, then 14.3, then 14.1 again. Breakout year last year, contract year 19.3. This past year, with all the crap that he went through and the slow start, he still averaged 13.9. So I'm willing to say that that's a guy, 14 PPR points per game. That's not round 2 material. It's really not round 3 material. But once you get into round 4, I think he's a good pick. I was happy to get Mark Andrews in this round, but the two guys that I really wanted were the guys that Jamie talked about. It was Josh Jacobs and Jaden Reed, and pretty much everybody else in this round outside of the quarterbacks, I made the dirty diaper face for. A lot of dirty diaper faces in this round.
I think my hang up on Reed is I wish we had seen the great production come with Christian Watson on the field, and to a lesser extent, Luke Musgrave. They were both hurt. Tucker Kraft more or less filled the shoes of Musgrave. So that's not.
I think also to that point though, Adam, Jordan Love wasn't playing at that level that he was at the end of the season either.
Yeah, Jordan Love was on fire, and Christian Watson was out, and Jaden Reed benefited from it. And I just wanted to see. Hopefully, we get. I think they could easily win this game. I hope Watson plays this week and they beat the Cowboys. We can get 2 games where both of those guys are playing. I think Jordan Love is just sort of an equal opportunity quarterback. He does not. I don't know that he's ever going to really feature one guy. We don't know enough about Jordan Love yet, but he kind of showed a pattern of changing his number one guy, which is great. I mean, good for him.
That's a big trait for a quarterback.
Yeah, that's awesome. But, is that going to hurt the fantasy options there? So that's my hang up with Reed, but pretty exciting what he did as a rookie. Really,
I'm super excited about it. He averaged 17.4 PPR points per game in his last 8. And yes, a lot of that was without Christian Watson there and everything else. But I think the Packers have realized, okay, Dobbs is solid. He can come through in the red zone. Watson, when they have him, is a big play threat. They don't have to necessarily wedge Watson into being that number 1 wide receiver. Reed is their number 1 wide receiver. I think it's going to be really
easy
about
that.
No, I think it's a San Francisco situation. I really do. I think it's very similar to how those guys will operate again. Similar coaching philosophies from LaFleur and Shanahan and how their offenses perform. And I don't think it's Jordan Love has to say, okay, I got to get Reed 10 targets or Watson 10 targets to have those guys be productive. You saw it. You could say Watson, yes, he's a difference maker. Dontavian Wicks was producing. Bo Melton was producing, so, and Reed was still getting the job done. So if you're just taking targets to other places, that's where those targets for Watson come from. It's not necessarily coming from Reed. It's not like he was just saying, okay, Reed is getting all this work and he can't operate with somebody else on the field. Again, Watson's an upgrade, at least you hope so, over those other guys. And the reason I think Reed has more appeal than Watson, you've seen 2 seasons now of this guy having a hard time staying healthy.
Yeah.
And so that's a big negative for me, that he can't stay on the field. While Reed was fighting through injuries, fighting through a chest injury, fighting through an ankle injury, and coming back and playing and producing and helping this team make the playoffs.
He also could line up anywhere, which I think we saw that from Dobbs as a rookie, but Reed did a better job of it. Reed was in the slot. Reed would work in short range. Reed would work on downfield shots. Like, his versatility is off the charts. And he's one of my favorite Packers receiver.
He's one of 10 receivers on the Packers that Matt LaFleur has compared to Devontae Adams. That's good.
Okay, so I'm going to look, if you want to see our teams, you can just check out the story on the website. It is, again, links in the episode description. Jamie, you took an approach with the 6th overall pick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Your first 9 picks are running backs and wide receivers. And then you took Evan Ingram in round 10 and Jordan Love in round 11. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. My guess, we're going to see a lot of that from you.
Oh, totally. And it's funny because, like, with the quarterbacks, for example, there were essentially 4 that I was targeting. I was kind of waiting to see, knowing you, which of the ones you were going to take as your second quarterback, and you did. You took CJ Stroud. So kind of how the draft was unfolding, I was like, I think I'm going to end up with one of Stroud, Purdy, Love, or Kyler, and I'm thrilled with all of those guys as a number 1 option. And so just the way that the board fell, I was like, okay, this is the right spot to take. And I was kind of debating once I got through round 9, okay, which position should I take first? And like, Evan Ingram's got way too much upside. Like, he fell way too far. So to take him, knowing that the Jaguars, quarterback receiver situation could be, sort of turned over once again. He was just unbelievable in the second half of the season, and 100 catches is hard to overlook for that position. So he fell way too far. So I don't think that necessarily happened. So if it was, let's say Ferguson or, Kittle fell too far also, so when I was looking at the position and Goddard too, those 4 guys were like, okay, I'm fine. So take the best available there. And then it was, okay, at that point, 2 of the quarterbacks were still available when I took Ingram. So Purdy and Love, once Purdy went, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take Love here. And was absolutely, like I said, beyond thrilled to get what could be a top 5 tight end. And to be honest, maybe a top 5 quarterback too in those 2 guys.
Dave, you took Mark Andrews in round 5 and Anthony Richardson in round 8 as the 9th quarterback off the board. But you had an interesting start. 3 receiver, full PPR league, and you just couldn't help yourself. At the 11th pick, you took Jonathan Taylor, and then 3 picks later, you took Devon Achane. So what'd you think about starting with 2 running backs?
I liked it because of the running backs who I got, and because I correctly assumed that I'd be able to get at least 2 wide receivers that I would really love. I was hoping to get 3 wide receivers I would really love, but when I was up in round 5, Andrews was staring me in the face, and I just figured that it was too good of a value. And then in round 6, I took another running back because I figured there wouldn't be a running back later on. So I'm always very conscious about if I'm going to go 0 RB, I don't mind doing it, but I can't pass up good value and certainly heavy upside at the thinnest position in fantasy. And I felt like I saw that 3 times in the first 6 rounds. And so first draft of the year, yes, went back to the old version, or I guess it's the current version, the maybe forever version of how I'm just going to draft, but still very thrilled with the receivers that I got. Christian Watson, getting him in late round 7 felt like a pretty good value to me. Rolled the dice on Anthony Richardson in round 8. And I thought back to where we were drafting Richardson last year and like, what's different between then and now? Well, we saw Richardson play, and in 4 games, he averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game. He left 2 of those games. He clearly can run in this league. I don't think the Colts are going to try and take that away from him. And I thought he was impressive as a short and mid-range thrower when he played. So hopefully the shoulder's okay. And that's it. He had a shoulder injury. We saw a glimpse of what he could do. I think the potential is still very high for him to be a cheat code type of fantasy quarterback where you're going to get good numbers from him throwing the ball, but excellent numbers of him rushing. Mm-hmm. And I've got the combination of him and Jonathan Taylor on my team. I'm going to get every single rushing touchdown in Indianapolis next year. And that's going to be one of the run heaviest teams as long as Anthony Richardson's under center.
All right, I had the 12th pick right after Dave. Dave stole a lot of good players from me. Kyron Williams, Garrett Wilson was how I started. T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle. And then maybe I make or break my team with Tony Pollard and James Conner at 60 and 61 overall. You do this and you're wondering where they're even going to be next year. Are the Cowboys going to bring someone in? Pollard was on the franchise tag. Connor, how good has he been? He's just been so good. It makes so much sense for, I think, the Cardinals to bring him back. He's got such a good thing with Kyler Murray. I also took Khalil Herbert. I can't imagine Deontay Foreman's going to be on the Bears. Herbert's proven himself, I think, anytime he's gotten the opportunity. But Joe Burrow and Jake Ferguson are at quarterback and tight end. And I also took C.J. Stroud. And I took C.J. Stroud 2 picks after Burrow. Like Burrow at the end of round 7 and Stroud with the last pick of round 9. And round 9, that pick came to me. I was like, I didn't really love anyone, and I love C.J. Stroud. So I was thrilled to get him there, even if I don't need him. But you know me with quarterbacks, you think you got your guy, and then you never know what happens. What if Burrow gets hurt again? I'll be happy that I have C.J. Stroud. I took a chance on Dotson, Mingo, Justin Ross, and Demarcus Robinson with 4 of my last 5 picks. Dotson, Mingo, Justin Ross, and Demarcus Robinson. For Dotson, it's easy, right? I mean, we loved him a lot last year. He's probably getting a quarterback upgrade. He could get a fancy new offensive coordinator that unlocks something. I think worth a gamble.
I'm with you on that.
Yep.
Round 10, first pick of round 10. All right. Show's gone a little long, so I'm going to save our emails for tomorrow. We'll look at the wild card weekend and more. Do some rankings and stuff like that on tomorrow's episode of Fantasy Football Today. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you later.